Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. Got another day of newsworthy stuff, and it mostly revolves around tariffs. I try to keep this as unpolitical as possible, but when it comes to some of what I'm trying to do as a prepper and what I'm trying to teach and get out to those of you as preppers, we're going to get a little political today. So some people are calling it the start of a trade war. I've heard one side, the right's arguing that the tariffs are a incentive to meet a different objective, and that's the whole thing with immigration and fentanyl. And part of the issue is stuff that has happened decades ago. And like one of the simple repercussions is they're saying 1.5 million businesses and homes between New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, their electricity comes in from Canada. It's just the way that we have our electrical system tied up. And the guy in charge of that province is saying, you're putting a tariff on us, so we're going to put a tariff on the energy. So, your people are going to see a bigger increase on how much they pay for their electricity. From the prepping side of that, my incentive would be I'm going to do everything I can to produce my own electricity, or I'm going to move out of that area. It doesn't matter where you live. And even if you set up your own system, you might run into issues. But, I can very simply say, I'm making an educated guess here that there's, probably a good handful of people that live in that area that are like, okay, whatever. I put in my solar and my wind, and, I've got my propane or whatever, and I'm taking care of myself. That's the mentality that I would have for a situation like that, where I am not, reliant on a different system. And I know that stuff costs money, and it's a huge investment. Where I live, they turn the power off periodically to do repairs and maintenance, or the system gets overstretched, and so there's not enough electricity within it. Like when it got super cold a few weeks ago, there's a few areas that didn't have power for several hours because the energy capacity was too high. So it doesn't really matter where you live. Your end goal should be I'm going to put a system in place to meet my needs. And you can make that simple math for everything. On Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, I'm going to have a video where I'm buying all the supplies for the chicken coop that we're building. I've got the plans. I've looked at the spare wood that I have left over from other projects. And, I'm just going to be able to build the coop right now, and it's looking like we're going to spend about $400 to do so. That is me seeing a recent problem in the system, and the solution is I'm going to take care of that problem myself. I'm going to become self-reliant and not deal with that issue anymore. Other things that come up from these tariffs, like one of the big things that they're talking about is like 95% of the avocados that Americans consume come from Mexico. I don't eat avocados, so I don't care about that. But the solution to this, and not a lot of people are going to like the solution to that, is you need to grow the food yourself. And with that, you should also know that for the vast majority of human history, you got to eat and consume foods that were grown locally for certain time periods, throughout the year. Like in our backyard, we get the dewberries, or some people call them blackberries, and they just naturally they're a wild berry where we're at, and for that several weeks throughout the year, I can pick several bowls a day. I can pick enough to get 1 or 2 servings for me and my son, because he loves blackberries. And for that month out of the year, we get blackberries. And after they're gone, they're gone. Because of the system that we have in place, we can get blackberries every single day of the year. It just depends on how much they're going to cost. And that's because we have a very robust trade network throughout the rest of the world, that you can have something like that all year round. It works the same way with most fruits and vegetables. So I don't have a lot of videos on it because we haven't dived very deep into preserving those sort of things. But if that is something that keeps you as close as possible to normal, then there's plenty of other videos on YouTube of brilliant people that talk about preserving this or canning that, or whatever. And you should take the time to go through and look at that stuff. Like one of the simplest things that you can do is, if you like eating bananas, not a lot of bananas are grown in the US. You can get them on the shelves 24/7. If that is something that is part of your normal daily diet, then you continue to buy your bananas weekly, and maybe you buy an extra bundle, and you're going to dehydrate them. So you kind of turn them into a chip, and those are going to last you a couple of years. Now you have a method to say, I'm getting my bananas, and I can eat them year round, because in this make-believe scenario, now they're only coming in for a couple of months out of the year. You can take it a step further. You can freeze dry your bananas. Different texture. They're not going to be, I would say, as refreshing. Now you've got your bananas for 20 or 25 years. So that way, if that supply of that thing ever gets cut off, you are still getting the nutritional value and most of the same taste of that item. And then the fourth and last thing that you can do is, well, I'm going to plant a banana tree so that I control getting my bananas. The problem you run into is, not everything that we like to consume grows where all of us live. And I can't speak for every single person, but we've talked about getting a couple of coffee bean trees. Our problem with that is they do not grow outside in our area, basically whatsoever, unless you are putting them in a greenhouse. The best way that the bananas work for us, the best way that the coffee works for us is miniature trees that are kept indoors all the time. And I can tell you, the amount of space that we have, we might be able to do one, maybe two of these trees. And that is not going to be nowhere near enough if you are the type of person that has 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day. Like, one miniature tree is going to make like 2 or 3 bags of coffee. So it's going to cover, a couple of weeks worth of coffee for you. So, this is like pushing it super far back. Like, it reminds me of like the Greek and Roman times, where if you see in any videos, they're always eating grapes and cheese and bread. That's part of the reason why they conquered so much of the Mediterranean. A lot of that food item stuff, they had to get from vast parts of their empire, and it was only the super wealthy that got that kind of stuff because they were able to pay, through their power and money and stuff, to have that stuff brought in. That's partially why, like, one of the most famous drinks across the world is tea, and that's because almost every region of the world has some sort of plant that their leaf can be boiled, dried, and then boiled to make a sort of tea. That's also probably why, some of the most important things in history have always been spices. It's not a joke that the Romans traded stuff in spices, and they paid people in salt. So, my argument for the tariffs is you need to decide what is normal for you. And in most of the US, fruits and vegetables are normal. A lot of the vegetables can be grown on your own. The electrical stuff. It's still kind of expensive, but if you really, want to, take your prepping to the next level, the sun covers the entire earth. It's windy in most places, a decent amount to put up a little turbine. All of these things you need to think about producing for yourself. And if you can produce these things for yourself, then these issues aren't going to impact you as badly. It kind of, going in left field again, but it was like the toilet paper issue at the start of COVID. For one, most people don't know in the US that we produce like 99% of our toilet paper in-house. We do import certain brands because, people buy different brands, and we export toilet paper. As a prepper, I was putting away, I was going to Walmart getting the really cheap stuff because it was really cheap and I could put a lot of it away quickly. But when the shelves were empty, I wasn't worried about what I'm gonna, wipe my behind with, because I was slowly adding these things to keep myself as close to normal as we could. And so for some of these issues, because I don't think, we're going to stop trading with people around the world, having a reserve of these items, can also get you through those low points. So, for me, I'm not too worried about, tomatoes and ketchup and, pasta kind of stuff, because we grow our own tomatoes. And that's one of the few things, that we're going to heavily, preserve and put back this year, so that, I don't really know how much we import from other countries, that kind of stuff. I know we grow a lot of that here, But it's not just tariffs that we should be worried about. We always have bad years. You know, I remember the worst wildfire in Texas happened like 12 or 13 years into, you know, one of the worst droughts that Texas had in its modern history. And so it's still important to stack to the rafters and, you know, increase your own, you know, personal stockpile, because I'm not just worried about tariffs. I'm worried about, you know, our water usage is shortened and we're not producing as much wheat, or, you know, the cow population, you know, it's calving season, and, you know, we're not, you know, they were expecting, you know, 20,000, you know, calves this season, and we only got 12,000, and so the price of beef is going to go up 40 cents. You know, it's hypothetical. I don't actually know the numbers on that, but I think all of this stuff can be avoided if you're doing your prepping. And, you know, you're not just putting away, you know, guns and bullets, because you can't eat that stuff. And you shouldn't put yourself in the situation where you have to try to go get those supplies. It's better to already have them, and that way, you know, you can sit behind your walls and continue to function as normal. But all that being said, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this stuff, and share it with your friends and family members. It really helps us out. And I'll catch you in the next one.